we're going to start. I think we have all of our guests here, so now we can start. First of all, let me welcome you to this session on achieving energy security through the energy transition in Latin America and the Caribbean. My name is Ilan Meirovich. I am the head of climate change at IDB Invest, the private sector arm of the IDB group. And I was given the wonderful opportunity to be your moderator of the whole session, but also I will moderate the second panel. So the structure of this session will be threefold. First, we'll have opening remarks by Marcelino. He's going to talk about what the RELAC initiative has achieved during this year. Then we will have the honor to have Mary Buss-Warlick from the International Energy Agency give us words on their behalf, on what they're seeing on the energy transition. Then Marcelino Madrigal will moderate the first roundtable with the ministers here, sitting already here. And then I will moderate the second roundtable, which will be focused on partnerships and agencies that are collaborating to support the energy transition in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. So with that, let me pass on the word to Marcelino to give us the initial words. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the IDB Pavilion. My name is Marcelino Madrigal, and I am the Division Chief of the Energy Division at the Inter-American Development Bank. Welcome to this event by the Renewables in Latin America and the Caribbean initiative, RELAC. RELAC was created in 2019 under the framework of the United Nations Secretary General Climate Action Summit. We are very glad to have here today the first member country of the RELAC initiative, which is Chile, and the last to join, which is Barbados. So, Minister, really welcome to this event. Specifically, the objective of RELAC is to achieve a regional target of at least 70% participation of renewables energies in the electricity mix in Latin America by 2013. We, at the IDB, act as technical secretariat of the RELAC initiative, and it is a pleasure to extend a warm welcome to you all. Renewable energies are at the center of climate action. Countries globally are seeking to increase their participation towards achieving carbon neutrality, and one of the first critical steps is to accelerate decarbonization of the power grid, which will be the key source for a low-carbon electrification of many other sources and uses of energy. A lot has changed in the last decade. Today, the cost of some renewables technologies, such as wind and solar, are lower compared to fossil fuels in many economies in Latin America. Additionally, a lot has been learned on how to manage these sources reliably in the power grids with the help of a variety of tools. Among those, better dispatch, better forecasting, and stronger, more integrated grids supported by flexible resources. Latin America and the Caribbean has taken advantage of those developments, and the flexibility that hydropower provides to many countries in the region, the integration of the electricity grids, and the significant progress in the deployment of new sources like wind and solar. And this is thanks to very effective mechanisms such as electricity auctions pioneered in the region, actually ahead of many other regions in the world. However, the ambition is higher, and as clearly envisioned by the RELAC initiative, there are still several obstacles that hinder a more accelerated deployment of renewable. This includes the need for more stable regulatory environments for efficient private participation, the need to improve the way our power markets are designed, and to improve the way we manage even larger shares of renewables. As we increase renewables, the challenge becomes higher. The RELAC initiative over the past year has focused on those challenges by exchanging knowledge, best practices in different areas, such as the technical integration issues of renewables, how to improve the institutional and the regulatory framework for accelerated adoption of renewables, and providing specific support to specific investments. It is our pleasure to mention that in 2022, more countries have joined the initiative, and I take this opportunity to give a warm welcome to our new member, Barbados. Barbados, a country that has shown tremendous leadership in the Caribbean efforts to become a fossil-free nation. I would like also to express our appreciation to the Ministries of Energy of Ecuador and Dominican Republic, which are the co-presidents of the RELAC initiative this year. In addition, thanks to our partner agencies that have joined the initiative, convinced by its clear ambition. They include the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, GEAP, thank you GEAP, the Global Power Systems Transformation Initiative, Enel Foundation, and also a warm welcome to the Global Wind Energy Council to this initiative. The partners will bring key technical resources and capabilities to help our countries achieve this important goal. Just to mention examples of the collaboration between RELAC members this year, the initiative has had four national workshops where concrete steps on technical assistance to increase renewables by removing barriers have been identified. Grid operators from Peru and other countries visited Uruguay, which has run securely a grid basically with 100% renewables in the past year, mainly hydro and wind, to learn about the operational challenges and how they did it to bring those experiences to other countries. Other countries like Ecuador are already executing the application of important regulatory changes to attract investments for large blocks of renewables that have been informed by the knowledge exchange between peers of the RELAC initiative. These dialogues and further helping define technical assistance and capacity building needs and their deployment to member countries can be implemented faster to help in their decarbonization pathways. We also had the opportunity to strengthen our knowledge agenda with partners like ARENA and the International Energy Agency, exchanging best practices and dissemination of useful information that now through RELAC can reach out faster and more efficiently to the key decision members. With that, welcome again to this event, and I wish a very fruitful exchange to accelerate energy security through decarbonization in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelino, for that excellent summary of what we have achieved in the few years, or the last year. And now let me introduce you to Mary Bruce Warlick, the Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Welcome, Director Warlick.
Thank you very much, ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It really is an honor for me to join you today. I know this is a really important discussion, and I want to give my sincere thanks to the Inter-American Development Bank for convening this event and asking us to join you. As a supporting agency of the RELAC initiative, the IEA is delighted to contribute to this timely and really important discussion about the role of energy transitions in achieving energy security in Latin America. Latin America's transition to clean energy, including the push for more non-hydro renewables, will not only improve energy security, but is really at the very center of it. The current global energy crisis, especially this year's events in Europe, but not only in Europe, really all around the world, have further underscored the need for the world to accelerate the transition even more. And renewable energy is a key component of the energy transition globally, as you all well know. According to the IEA World Energy Outlook 2022, which was just recently released last month, the global share of renewables in power generation needs to increase from 28% in 2021 to over 25%, to over 50% in 2030 to remain on track for commitments under the Paris Agreement. And with vast hydro, wind, solar, and biomass resources, Latin America is certainly set to play a vital role in achieving this goal. We see renewable energy capacity growing by 1/3 in the next 5 years alone, and that is an increase of 96 gigawatts. That is about 3 times the capacity that I understand Chile has today. And in line with global trends, the focus of this growth is shifting from hydropower to solar. So the diversification of renewable energy resources will very much help to hedge against climate impacts on hydropower and thus improve the region's overall energy security. But in order to enable the incorporation of more variable renewables, there's an urgent need to make power systems more flexible and to mobilize investments across the value chain, including in electricity grids, energy storage, and digitalization. And across all these areas for action, international collaboration is key. The IEA strongly supports the role that RELAC is playing in convening Latin American governments and global energy institutions to cooperate around a greater integration of renewable energies in the region. So once again, just like to say the IEA looks forward to continuing to work closely with RELAC on further tapping Latin America's renewable energy potential and charting the region's transition pathway in a cost-effective and people-centered manner while ensuring energy security. So thank you once again for the opportunity to say a few words. Thanks.
Thank you for framing the conversation, and now let's pass on to the first round. Marcelino Madrigal, as he mentioned, Division Chief of IDB. And here we have Diego Pardo, Minister of Energy of Chile, and Ricardo Marshall, Director of Roof to Reefs of Programs from Barbados.
Thank you very much, Helen. And as I said before, let's welcome Diego Pardo, Minister of Energy in Chile, Ricardo Marshall to the left, who is the Roofs and Reefs Program Director for Barbados. And it's really a great honor for me to be here with the first member of RELAC, which is Chile, and the last one to join, which is Barbados. I think it's really symbolic today that we are seeing how the RELAC initiative is growing. And the idea, Minister, of the first round of questions is to discuss how do you see the transition going forward in your countries, specifically in Chile. We had a very difficult year, marked by, going out of the pandemic, then the war in Ukraine, high gas, oil prices, inflation in energy prices, of course. What is next for Chile, one of the champions in the region in renewables and also in the world? Do you think the current situation will stall the transition or accelerating it? And what are the plans for Chile in the short term on this acceleration and with its potential contribution to achieving the RELAC initiative goal of getting to 70% renewables in the region? Minister?
Well, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. This has indeed been a hard year. Next winter is going to be harder, and the next following that is going to be even harder. This winter, Europe still has full inventory, which will help them to get through the winter. Not so sure about the winter coming after that one. So we are working, trying to give clear signal in the long term about our commitment to renewable energy. We understand that we are going through a rough patch, and it's going to last for a couple of years, but the market signals for the long term, they need to be sustained. We have been rather successful in getting in sustaining these signals. On the natural gas side, I think is twofold. There are two sets of reasons. One, we have been rather lucky, just luck, because our seasonal peak does not overlap with European seasonal peak, and that really helps. They're kind of being coming closer because seasons are kind of changing. I mean, winter is becoming longer, and summer sometimes is unpredictable when it's going to start. But at least we're in the south hemisphere, and that helps. And on the other hand, Argentina has had production surplus, and that has stabilized the problem. Last winter, and probably this winter too, we have faced problems with the price, but not with the quantity, not with the amount of gas supplied. So we have been putting in place, and the same with oil and carbon and all the other fossil fuels. There has been problems with the P, but not with the Q, and that what we have been doing is to put in place policies which we are not particularly proud of, in order to stabilize the prices of natural gas, of diesel, of kerosene that in Chile is used. It has a widespread use in residential heating. And even though these are really actually like subsidies to fossil fuel consumption, it has helped us in order to contain public opinion. And because public opinion has been relatively contained in Chile, if you look at, as opposed to, I don't know, the UK, where people are kind of rallying on the street because of electricity bills they are getting. These subsidies, even though we are not proud of subsidizing fossil fuels, have been able to calm down public opinion, and this relatively policy space we have opened has helped us to sustain these policies directed to foster renewable energy investments. And so that's probably the key for what we have been doing so far. Not being affected on the Q, just on the P, and putting some policies that are not very green policies, but help us to get through the winter, and hope that once supply in the rest of the world is kind of normalized, we will be back on track, not losing that much in the process.
So that, and thank you, Minister. What you said is critical. There are certain periods of challenges where some tools need to be deployed, but keeping really the long-term view, the signal of where the country is going is very important. So thanks for that. I wanted to mention that you don't see Minister Tejeda from Honduras. He missed the last connection flight, and he sends his regards to everyone in the table. But also wanted to mention that today in this table, if he were here, Honduras and Chile, those would be two countries that are in the top 5 in the world in solar power penetration. So in Latin America, we have two countries in the top 5 of solar penetration, Chile and Honduras. So it's, we're thankful for Minister trying to get to the COP, but he had this problem in the connection. So with that, I'll pass it to Ricardo Marshall. Marshall, Barbados is really a champion in the Caribbean. We're really glad and happy that we can support you. For those who don't know, actually, Barbados has more EV charging ports per capita in Latin America than any country, because they realize how important it is to decarbonize also transport. So, Ricardo, what are the lessons from this short-term situation with oil prices, and has that made Barbados think through its strategy, or have you implemented more acceleration policies? What can you tell us about the lessons of this year's situation going forward for Barbados?
Excellent. So thank you very much. And I think for us, every time we think about it and where we started with COVID and then what happens the next year, I think we're very afraid to say, this year has been the worst, let's see what happens. Because in 2001, in the midst of dealing with COVID, we then had the volcanic eruption in our neighboring island of St. Vincent. And while St. Vincent was absolutely devastated by the volcanic eruption, the country that was second most affected was Barbados. We literally had to close our airport or seaport. You couldn't see for days. It looked as though it was midnight at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had to deal with those things. And one of the things that we quickly realized was that it covered all of the solar panels, and you had to do the maintenance, and essentially that eruption ensured that we had to do 4 times more maintenance on all of our mechanical stuff than we would have had to have done before, because essentially you're dealing with very abrasive glass and rock particles. After that, we had a hurricane, so you know, things just got so much better. And then we've had to deal with the issues of this year, and events that we have absolutely no control over. But what that has done is really cement to us the need to ensure that we are more independent of what is going on globally. We're right now finalizing our revised physical development plan, and our PDP integrates climate change into the solution. It is directly related to our Roofs to Reefs program, which is our climate resilient development model going forward. And the two of those influence what went into our NDC. They also influence the sectoral policies, including the energy policy. And what we have been seeking to push is to move towards a fossil fuel free circumstance by 2030, but given what we have seen, we've revised that to 2035. So we've had to change in that respect, but it has also really galvanized to us what it is we need to do. We're not just looking at solar, we're also looking at opportunities with respect to wind, both onshore and offshore, as well as the potential for wave. We're looking at waste to energy. We've already been able to divert 70% of waste away from landfilling, and we want to take that number up to 95%. So we're integrating all of the different systems and flows, and I think what the circumstance now globally has demonstrated is that these are the things that are needed now more than ever. We have a history of our work on solar for water heating purposes, and we have just used that to promote the expansion so that we're having more decentralized generation and distribution of solar. And so we've put a program in place where we have a feed-in tariff that deals with those units under 5 and then at 10, and then you go through a negotiation process with government and with the utility providers for projects larger than that. Included in that, we have a project with the Barbados Water Authority where about 30% of our power was going to BWA because of the importance of pulling water from ground for our water needs. And of course, that is very energy consumptive. And what we've sought to do is to put all of those units on solar, and we use the excess that is generated during the day. We're using that excess to feed into a revolving loan fund to assist us with other activities in the water sector. So it's just demonstrating the linkages for us and the fact that we know that we need to move in that direction. We also spoke about the charging ports for EV. We're also moving towards a fossil fuel free transport sector. And just for example, we have the largest fleet of EV buses in the Caribbean, and we're trying to move our fleet to full EV. So our public transport by government is about 70% EV right now. Okay, I think I lost it for a minute there. About 70% EV right now, and we're looking to move that to 100. We're also discussing with the private transport persons as well as individual vehicle owners.
Thanks a lot, Ricardo. And those are very good points that for small islands is about decarbonizing in tandem, transport and energy, especially in small economies where the issue of range anxiety is not that of a big deal. Now, on my second round, RELAC is about common goals, It's about sharing goals, which is more on the policy front. But the region is also sharing and is highly integrated, in the energy system in many regions, especially Central America, maybe the Southern Corn. Last year, Uruguay was able to help support the droughts in the southern part of Brazil by exporting energy. So in addition to the fact that integration helps reduce the cost of achieving the carbon goals, we have made several studies. One of those says we can save tens of billions of dollars in Latin America to achieve even 80% of renewables if we integrate. But we're seeing now how having integrated systems is also helping with the reliability of our systems against, the impacts of climate change. So, Minister Pardo, what do you see as the potential, challenges, of course, but also opportunities of having a more integrated Latin America to pursue deeper decarbonization as we face also the challenge now of climate impacts on many of our systems in the Central America, the Caribbean, and the Southern Corn. So what role do you see for integration? What are those challenges that you see are more important to tackle down?
So, thank you. The Uruguay case, though, it's quite exceptional. It happens much less that it should happen. The export that Uruguay did to the southern part of Brazil. The interconnection of electrical grids has a huge potential that it's unexploited in the region for several reasons. First, because countries have different potential for renewable energy, and the renewable energy sources that complement each other. So if we were able to put all of them in one grid, the resilience of the region would be much higher than the resilience of the sum of each country individually considered. It also has to be considered that natural resources are always scarce, but within that scarcity, fossil fuels are much worsely distributed than renewable resources. So renewable resources within the Latin American region are more widely distributed than fossil fuels. So if we were able to have a integrated grid, the capabilities of the region together will be muchly improved as a unit with respect to the rest of the world. It will make us much less dependent on the rest of the world. And this has a lot of potential, not only considering the resilience of the grids, but also from a sustainability point of view. Much less shipping would be required if we were, as a region, more autonomous in our ability to feed our the energy necessities of our people, of our industries. We have been doing some progress as a country. On Friday, we announced an integration project with Argentina, and I think that's the path. Huge integration will take time, will take big infrastructure, big transmission lines that are hard to build, expensive to build. But there are a lot of lines that need just to be reaccommodated or finished in short spaces. And I think the project that we announced is a very good one. It's just from 2 substations in Argentina and Chile, and it enables some trading of electricity. We will export electricity created with photovoltaic projects during the day. We will receive during the night electricity coming from Argentina from natural gas power plants, but without destabilizing the grids. Because once you are incorporated to a different grid, it comes the risk is destabilizing the operation of the grids. And once, I don't know, you have blackouts that affect populated areas, everything can go sideways from political point of view. So these kind of projects, they are rather safe and enable some trading. I think it will help a lot, and we need to find much more of these other projects. We have 3 others on the pipeline. I encourage my peers from other countries and the region to find similar projects that are from substation to substation. Those are secure, won't compromise the operation of the grid, but they will enable to start trading and to start exploring the complementariness of our respective energy matrices.
Thank you, Minister. What you mentioned is really very wise. That's how the integration of many countries started in Latin America, point to point, safely exchange some hydro, and it seems like the future in Latin America is exchanging big blocks of variable renewables, getting support from the other country. So definitely integration, something to pursue with the right tools, on the regulatory side, on the operation of the grid. So that's a very good observation. Ricardo, tell us a little bit more about Barbados and the ideas of developing hubs for offshore wind. Small islands have little opportunities to integrate sometimes electrically, although there are some in the Caribbean. What other forms of cooperation in the Caribbean do you see? Would offshore wind be that tool to integrate many islands and develop a big hub of offshore wind to supply many islands? Do you see that as a possibility? I have seen some studies that indicate that yes, that could be a way to integrate the Caribbean. But what is your thoughts on offshore development in Barbados in general?
It is one of those issues that is quite vexing and a difficult one for us to deal with, because you have a number of very small countries, but they're independent states, and each of them are at different points of development. And so the challenges oftentimes are very, very dissimilar. But because we lack the size, we lack the scale to attract the private sector in most instances to what it is we want to do. We have, however, been looking at IUS solutions, even though we have, the slides have been very busy, even though we have very different policies and regulatory frameworks, we've been looking to see how we can work together in that respect. And we believe that what we've seen in Northern Europe has demonstrated the fact that you can get wind islands and you can get that sort of operation working, and we're looking at that for ourselves in the region. Right now, we're doing the sorts of studies that we need to do to evaluate the potential and the feasibility in that respect. Because, of course, we recognize the need to do it, because we're the ones on the front lines of the climate crisis. We don't have to ask whether or not the climate is changing. We don't have to ask whether or not climate change is having a negative impact. we're suffering the loss and damage right now. And we have been working at trying to make our utilities more climate resilient. And included in that is moving a lot of our utility services underground, but also in looking to see what we can do to find the sorts of technologies that can allow us to, when we know there's a system coming, make the changes so that we can get the equipment down and then back up. And an opportunity to become more attached than we are already through undersea cabling to carry that sort of power will also allow all of us to be able to get back up and running that much more quickly after disaster. We know what it's like to lose 5%, 20%, 100%. In the case of Antigua, 180%. In the case of Dominica, 226% of GDP in a 5-hour period. And that is critical for us to be able to get back up and running. For most of us, our water system is dependent on our electricity supply. And in order to get the water back up and running, we need to get the electricity back up and running. And so we believe that that is a new area in which we can cooperate. And once we can get that flowing, we can look not just at wind, but some of the countries have geothermal potential, and we can look at how we can share those opportunities, especially as we move to decarbonize going forward, because we also think that even though what we put out there is a drop in the bucket, demonstrating that we can keep to 1.5 degrees and to what we have been calling for the rest of the world to do means that we challenge those others to align their NDCs to 1.5. And our most critical issue in the region in that respect is being able to decarbonize and to demonstrate that we can meet the mitigation targets that we're asking for globally.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. And what you says is very telling, because although the Caribbean islands are not always integrated physically, the impacts of climate change are, pushing other ways of collaboration. Utilities helping each other to recoup after a hurricane hits your infrastructure. So cooperating to rebuild is also critical, and it tells a lot about the reality of the Caribbean with so many and more frequent events. With that, I think we're really right there on time. I would like to, again, thank you, the founding member of the RELAC initiative, Minister Diego Parro from Chile, and the last member. Welcome to Ricardo Marshall, representing Barbados. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelino. Thank you, ministers. I think that it was a good framing for the next part of the panel. The second roundtable will be more with agencies that are working to support countries in this low carbon transition. So let me invite our panelists, Bino Parthan, head of the regions of IRENA, Chris Lang, head of public sector lending for Latin America from EIB, Maria Jose Podoy, head of the climate policy support program from GIZ, Isabel Beltran, director for Latin America and the Caribbean in the GEAP, and Ron Benoff, international program manager at NREL. Thank you. So we just heard very interesting conversations from both ministers, and one of the issues that came about was technologies are critical for the energy transition. And they mentioned waste to energy, green hydrogen, wave energy, solar energy, offshore wind, just to say some of the ones that were mentioned before. From all of your perspectives, I would like to know, which technologies do you consider the most strategic and how they should be deployed? We have heard that maybe green hydrogen, it seems to have a lot of potential, but how do we make sure that it's deployed correctly? And maybe since most of you are working in other regions, maybe there are some lessons that you can bring to Latin America. So why don't we start with you, Ron? It doesn't have to have the red thing on.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for learning across regions and from each other about the best technologies and technical solutions. So there's maybe 5 things that I would highlight. I mean, clearly there's a huge potential to further scale up wind, solar photovoltaics, and energy storage technologies in the region, and energy storage could include a role for hydrogen as well as battery storage. And to enable those technologies, one of the key elements is to build out transmission capacity, but also apply some innovative techniques that have been used called creating competitive renewable energy zones, where you identify a portfolio of renewable energy generation projects that have high potential and with strong ability to serve load, and expedite permitting of those projects associated with transmission build, solve the chicken and egg problem of having projects without transmission or transmission without projects. So that's one. The prior panelist already highlighted kind of the second key, which is to really look at increasing the amount of interconnection across electricity grids in the region, which will improve power flow and availability, also better tap technologies that can provide some baseload characteristics like hydropower and geothermal and biomass. Third, there's some really exciting innovations happening with grid forming technologies, so smart inverters that can provide the frequency and voltage regulation and maintain system stability, which is necessary. As you get to higher and higher shares of renewable energy, they have very different characteristics, a lot more variability in frequency and voltage. And if you no longer are relying on large rotating fossil fuel generation systems, you lose some of your physical inertia. You can replace that with grid forming inverters, but you need to have some common standards in place and procedures for procurement of those technologies. And there's some exciting innovations happening around the world on grid forming inverters. Fourth would be control rooms of the future. As we're getting to much larger amounts of distributed renewables, distributed storage, very interactive controls, you need to have, the control rooms also need to be optimized to be able to use state-of-the-art data management systems, have improved inertia monitoring, forecasting technologies, and so there's a lot of potential to upgrade control rooms. And then finally are the distributed smart grid technologies all throughout the distribution system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, because I think you just touched on the specificity of not only the technologies that we all have in mind, like solar, wind, or geothermal, but the specific new development, technological development that will allow to have renewable energy systems. Binu, what's your take from Irena?
Hello?
It's counterintuitive.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's always a bit confusing. Yeah, from our perspective, what we find is that solar energy, because of the cost reductions that we are seeing, is likely to provide a major significant share of the energy of the future. It also does have other benefits in terms of localization, local job creation, and a lot of those indicators which are very important for the governments in this region and beyond. So we see, because of these reasons, solar playing a more important role. But I think there's generally been a lot of emphasis on electricity generation technologies, not so much in terms of the enabling technologies. And as you go further into 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, shares of renewable integration in the grid, then there are these enabling technologies. And Ron alluded to the energy storage. This is going to be very critical going forward. And also technologies such as digitalization, the whole grid, which you'd referred to, and also use of robotics, artificial intelligence, and really managing that whole system operation. So we see a lot of investments that will be required in storage, enabling technologies, and that also includes green hydrogen. Now, green hydrogen, we see a lot of interest from a lot of countries which are not normally energy players, and even to the extent that countries which are net importers of energy, trying to be a global exporter of green hydrogen. And this is something that we'd encourage countries in this region and elsewhere with, to be a bit cautious before you really put in investments to see what are the opportunities for hard to abate sectors in the domestic market and use that to leverage green hydrogen. So green hydrogen, we would say be very careful. We have seen that about 135 countries globally have green hydrogen strategies. There's not going to be enough demand for all of those productions. So I would say be careful on the green hydrogen part, but emphasis on the enabling technologies. And finally, a point is about we need to think beyond technologies to market design on how to bring in storage and various other things. And that should also not be forgotten with the focus on technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Binu. Chris, what are you seeing from EIB in terms of the financing of these technologies? Is there one that is more prevalent? Push it. Now.
Can you hear me now? I think I'd first like to step back. When we're talking about the technologies, we need to recognize that we talk about Latin America and the Caribbean. The diversity of the countries we're dealing with is huge. So what is fit for purpose in Brazil is not necessarily right for Barbados. And so I think we need to perhaps, when we're talking about the discussion of the technology, is which stage are they in? And you don't want to have a situation where you run into a technology that they don't necessarily, the country's not ready for, and how to monitor it. And with climate change, we heard about the situation in Barbados with the solar panels. You may think solar is a panacea, but if you've got a volcano exploding next door, I don't think so. And when with green hydrogen, it's a bit the flavor of the day, but there are countries like Chile who have a very well-documented strategy, and the strategy it's involving all of the areas of the economy. So it's not just about the green hydrogen part, it's about the infrastructure, it's everything that's going to make it happen, which includes a role for the private sector, which includes a role for public infrastructure, banks, and so there's enough, let's say, in the pie for everyone. Where we're sitting right now is that certain countries have created an enabling environment for certain technologies. If you look at Brazil, suddenly individuals are willing to invest in solar panels. I think there's some good lessons that we can see in different countries of what they have done to try to create interest, crowding in the private sector to make it happen. And in countries, one thing is technology risks. Someone mentioned wave energy, which is something that, for 10 years I've been hearing about it. I remember years ago going to a conference, and when I mentioned the word bankability, they thought I was talking Chinese, that it was a science fair project, and, why would anyone, be talking about cash flows? But, scaling up. But, indeed, the power of the marine energy is the one thing that 10 years ago we were expecting it to have a part of the wedge, and I don't know what happened. We did have in Europe one of the NER 300 projects was related to marine energy. I don't think Brexit helped in the sense that the EIB was looking at projects in that area in the northern part of Scotland. So my message is that the technology, yes, matters, but it needs to look first at the needs of the country, and if the private sector is not expanding that technology, why? Is it the technology risk? Is it related to the climate? Is it related to the scalability? And so those issues, I don't want to repeat the comments made before about the specific technologies, but I just want to say that it's really important where it's going and how it can be used.
No, thank you, Chris. And I think that when we talk with private sector sponsors, they always go back to the enabling environment. Are we making sure that this project is going to last and we won't have issues later on and it won't become a stranded asset because the regulation changed? And that point of enabling environment is critical to be able to deploy technologies. And I'm sure that Maria Jose Geiseta has done quite a lot on enabling environment for new technology deployment. So please give us your take on this.
Thank you so much. So, well, we are cooperating with 40 countries in Latin America, 40 projects, and what we see is like a focus on batteries, storage on electric mobility, green hydrogen, renewable energy, and of course energy efficiency. So we are talking about technologies, but we're also talking about digitalization. So this come hand in hand. So we have like the twin transition on digitalization and also the energy security. And so it's not only talking about what's new on the market, but also how to be the new kid on the block when we talk about digitalization, if we talk about upgrading your systems. So this would be one thing. The other thing we like to focus on is not only technology and digitalization. I'm not a native digital person, but there are new people coming on, and we need to be trained as well. So it's all about capacity building in the institutions, but also talking about new startups to be like more bankable, to receive the money, to make some change in the system.
Thank you, Maria Jose. And I think to the point of trainings, capacity building, enabling environment, Isabel, I know that we launched the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, and the intention first was just to focus on the last mile, remember? And then we realized that with the last mile, maybe we needed to increase it to low carbon technologies that would allow us to get to the 1.5. So in that context, what technologies are you seeing also in other contexts, in other regions? You're working in different regions, not only Latin America, and what can be the lessons to bring to the region?
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, indeed, the Global Energy Alliance, initially in Latin America, given the specific circumstances of the region, thought that last mile was a worth place, and I think still is, to focus on. Given that it's more costly and more complicated than other improvements in access. But as the Global Energy Alliance, we focus exclusively on solar technologies. So starting there, even though I think all the other efforts are probably interesting and worthwhile. And what we're seeing is very much, what was shared before in terms of there are lots of lessons that can be shared, but the solutions are really local. So in terms of solar, what we see is as it was mentioned, the improvements on the inverters that have remote capabilities to improve monitoring, customer service, and also we're thinking, for example, in Haiti, piloting along with the IDB and the World Bank mesh grid technologies, which I think have been proven or piloted before in Africa. But in a different context that was highlighted in Egypt, there seemed to be something that is really has the potential to be really impactful for Haiti's electrification needs. We've also shared learnings. I think most important learnings probably have not even been technology-wise, because I think that the region that happens organically through the private sector mostly, but also the need to overlay other types of interventions with these projects, for example, productive use. So economic development has to be tied to the increase in the use of energy. And so the source of that energy is important, but it's also important to incentivize the actual increase in the use of it. So piloting interventions that have new technologies, but also come with technical assistance in terms of increasing the actual access, but also the consumption of electricity have proven to be successful not only for economic development, but also for increasing the bankability of the projects for the developers as well. So those have been our lessons so far.
And since we're in a context of RELAC and we want to see how we can establish the work program for next year, I think part of the questions that we have in mind is how can we strengthen our work to advance at a faster pace? You know, we're running out of time here. So what would you, all of you, be the recommendations to try to strengthen this work with the lessons that we heard on capacity building, enabling environment, the technology, but that it's local, the solutions are local. So what would be your, your recommendations for RELAC in terms of how to strengthen to get this done at a faster pace? Maybe we'll start with Van.
Thank you. Thank you, Helene. Is it on? No? Now? Oh, there we go. Woke everybody up. So a couple recommendations. I think one would be for RELAC, in addition to the really strong goal that's been established of 70% renewable energy by 2030, to also establish a longer term, more ambitious goal, so that there's a common vision of not only our countries aiming to get to 70% by 2030, but perhaps it's 80% by 2035, or some longer term vision that everybody can coalesce around and have plans to achieve. Second would be to work more at what are the opportunities for harmonizing energy policies and regulation and market design across the region to help facilitate investment and common participation by the business community, along with improving interconnection as well. The third would be to really dig more deeply into analysis of the needs for regional transmission capacity expansion, and to have coordinated plans to optimize those investments in those areas, including back to this concept of creating these kind of priority renewable energy development zones and planning for the transmission and the power trade. And then fourth would be to invest more capacity building and knowledge sharing, the technical solutions, some of which are for grid modernization. And we're happy, I'll just note, there's a global system transformation consortium that brings together system operators that's now a RELAC partner who are working on these technical solutions to expand the peer learning, the technical support across those system operators to support solutions with related workforce development activities to train the next generation of engineers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Chris?
No, I'd just like to comment on two aspects, which is the importance of having an even playing field, that is something that, you know, if you want the private and public sector to cooperate, it's necessary that you have the regulatory stability, that, you know, regarding the grid codes and the market rules, to have fair competition. And the other point relates to the need of just transition to make sure that no one's left behind. I think here, you know, that, you know, when you need to bring in the stakeholders into the process, it's an important element that one should not overlook.
Maria Jose.
So I would have like 7 recommendations. So the first one, we focus on training and capacity building, of course in public institutions, but not only. Second would be to emphasize on a coordinated and coherent approach within the ministries, support the cooperation between public and private sector, enhance the cooperation between science and technology and the public sector, underline the South-South cooperation, maybe also looking at other regions like Indonesia, the ASEAN region, which might have the similar issues as in Latin America, make it accessible to all the people, like leave nobody behind, and align also forces with upcoming initiatives. I mean, seeing COP26 and COP27 now, it's not only the COP27 of implementation and speeding up. I think it's also, and we saw it in COP26, it's the COP of upcoming initiatives. So the world is changing. So it's not like the normal partnerships between countries, but also between regions. And maybe look out for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, from I would say regional interconnections are important, particularly in South America, and there is a good example in Central America. So that would help in higher levels of renewable energy, variable renewables in the electricity system. Of course, capacity building, particularly on flexibility and also valuation of storage is something that IRENA can also provide. And the other aspect is financing. Financing is going to be important, not just financing of merchant or PPA-based renewable energy power generation, but increasingly what's happening in Asia and increasingly in Africa is really how do you finance non-bankable phase out of existing power plants which are either inefficient or based on fossil fuels, and that's something which Latin America and the Caribbean has not been part of that bandwagon, if you will. So this is really something which is happening at a scale in Indonesia, in South Africa, Vietnam, possibly in Senegal and India. So there will be at some stage in the future some financing mechanism for energy transition by phasing down and phasing out existing high carbon power generation, and that is something that we need to start thinking about as to how that mechanism will work and how that transition is just and fair to those investors in that system. So that's something where maybe there is an opportunity for institutions like IRENA, who are active globally, to look at some of those emerging lessons, good and bad, from these initiatives elsewhere, and probably try and see how we can create a framework for Latin America and the Caribbean for that. So those are some quick thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before I pass on to you, Isabel, I would like to share, just taking advantage of the mic, that we at IDB Invest did test a closing of thermal power plant, a coal thermal power plant in Chile with NG Energia, because we did a financing using blended finance. So they closed the thermal power plant before the established agreement with the country, and there are some lessons there where the enabling environment established by the government was the anchor to see that they were actually moving faster than they had anticipated. So I think there are lessons that we can share, and they could be the basis for potential Article 6 examples when there is a carbon market locally. But pass it on to you.
Thank you, Elen. I think to keep in mind and to reinforce again the opportunity that we really have to make sure that this transition is just and that we really address the last 3% of the population that still doesn't have access. That RELAC has provided so far. We're new partners, an amazing opportunity for and a space for coordination. But I think there's more support needed from all of us supporters of RELAC in terms of making sure that they can follow up with the implementation of the work as well. And also, as you just said, Elen, is really thinking about how to increase the amount of funding that goes to these types of projects from climate finance. So thinking about new examples like the one in Chile with NG and others in terms of like how we can really get a bigger share of the climate finance for these type of projects in a region that usually doesn't get much of it.
Thank you, Isabel. So, Marcelino, I have 19 items that were mentioned here for the work program that you can do for next year, for 2023. So hopefully in COP28, Marcelino will tell you that he has worked on all 19 topics that were mentioned right now. So with that, thank you so much for giving us your inputs, your highlights in terms of what RELAC can do to strengthen the work in the region. Thank you so much. And now with this, I'll pass on to the final words by Alfonso Blanco. I didn't want to change your name. He's the Executive Director of OLADE to give the final words. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, greetings to the present authorities, to those who follow us remotely. Congratulations to our partner, the IDB, and all the other agencies that are incorporated and support RELAC, and fundamentally to the countries that are part and committed to this important and unique clean energy and climate action. Latin America and the Caribbean advance in sustainable energy. The region already has 61% renewable energy installed in its power generation capacity. And in RELAC, we have established ourselves the ambitious goal of reaching 70% in 2030. As we said, this has already been ratified at the level of commitment by 16 countries in our region. In terms of primary energy, the region has 33% of renewables, making us the region with the highest share of renewable sources in its primary energy matrix. If we compare that with the 13% of the rest of the world, the region clearly leads in terms of renewability. And if we consider the emissions of the energy sector of the global CO2 emissions, Latin America only contributes 5%, but our region is highly vulnerable to climate change, but its contribution in percentage in terms to the inventory of greenhouse gases is very low. We have also shown it in this global supply crisis that regional markets are more price stable than other regions. This is due to the fact that the contribution of markets is increasingly supported by long-term renewable energy contracts that provide stability to electricity prices in internal markets. We have also proven that to be successful and leaders in auctions of electricity from renewable resources, which is the secret behind this model. But we must emphasize that this situation is not uniform throughout the region and countries. The global supply crisis has had a strong impact on those countries that are still heavily dependent on fossil generation and imported fuels. And RELAC actions are part of the solution to this price and energy scarcity situation. On the other hand, our region advances in hydrogen strategies, being pioneers in the development of projects oriented to the hydrogen value chains in many of our countries. We have provided privileged renewable resources, wind that exceeds 40% capacity in a great part of our region, and a sun that allows energy to be generated at highly competitive costs in most of our markets. Renewability has been shown to make our system more efficient and competitive. Renewable energies in Latin America and the Caribbean prove to be cost competitive compared to other generation alternatives. And renewables are a great strength of our region in comparison with the other parts of the world. Distributed generation gains space in our region. Digitalization advances and processes for the modernization and adaptation of regulatory frameworks are observed in some of our countries. Those are big steps, but we need a commitment that must go further, because even though we are not responsible for the inventory of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, due to our late development process, our climate commitment has proven to be a political decision in most of our countries. But everything is so simple? No. We have great additional challenges. The renewability goal requires an additional capital flow over the baseline scenario. The gaps between countries in our region are large, and the development of renewable markets. Access to financing is easy for our mature markets, but a major obstacle for weaker economies. The virtuosity of renewability often comes up against economic and financing barriers. Without institutional weakness and policies that do not have continuity between government administrations. We still need better and more modern regulatory frameworks to have renewable development goals. We need more innovation and development of our capabilities. We need more integrated and dynamic electricity market to be more efficient and for better energy security. We have been working on all of this at RELAC. The IDB and its technical secretariat and the accompaniment of other regional and international agencies are part of the work behind this growing political commitment. We have encouraged the participation of all the countries, and we encourage to incorporate the private sector in these efforts and supporting the development of the necessary strategies. We focus on reaching and incorporating all the countries of the region into this regional goal. We aim to support their strategies of a greater renewability. We encourage climate commitment with actions in the energy sector and fundamentally aligned with all the climate policies. We have made a significant advance, but we still have a long way to go to achieve the 70% renewables by 2030 and establish Latin America and the Caribbean as a global example of sustainable energy system. Thank you very much.
And with that, we close this event on achieving energy security through the energy transition in Latin America and the Caribbean by the RELAC initiative. Thanks to everyone for being here, and have a good afternoon and rest of the day. Thank you.